Today, I'm going to show you how we can modify our sales invoices. To get started, we're going to go into sales and then go into sales invoices. Something very important to talk about before we start to modify these invoices is as soon as we start to modify them, they're going to be creating two different versions of the same invoice. To show you this, I'm going to emulate this by creating another tab. And then I'm going to go back to my original tab and we're going to be focusing on invoice number 263, which is for Bill Nye. So this invoice has already been saved, has not been delivered yet though. So we can still make some changes if we need to be. So to get started, we go to the context menu, then we have the option to modify. As soon as we click into this, it's going to put us into the edit invoice mode of this invoice. Now that means that if I come over here and go into sales and sales invoices, so I just launched a second tab. So once I pop into sales invoices, I'm going to specifically search for invoice 263. You can see there's two of them, one on top of the other. Dang it, I keep doing that. So as soon as I search for them, you can see there's one on top of the other, and this is because there's two different statuses. So one of them says editing, and the other one says in progress. So this is the one that we're manipulating. So we're modifying this invoice because it's on another screen like that. So occasionally you might see some invoices that will do this. This means that someone is currently modifying them. So there's going to be two versions of it. The reason why there's two versions of it is because as soon as we save the change on this invoice, it's going to overwrite the in progress one and save it as basically another invoice. So it's going to overwrite the previous version of the invoice and it's going to overwrite it on top. So in AltheaSuite, we don't keep different versions of the invoice. So as soon as you get done with your modification of the sales invoice, it's going to be as is, whatever changes that you made. So this might be something that you want to do very seldomly. These modifications could be something simple like maybe one of your employees made a mistake and it was supposed to be a different price, or maybe it was supposed to be a different customer entirely. The main reason why people don't want to modify is because maybe they chose the wrong SKU. Maybe this was supposed to be, instead of a QB, maybe this could have been a WB or a different version of the same model number or SKU. In which case, what we can do is simply remove that item. I'll go ahead and copy that. So remove the item. We'll say yes. And it's got taken that out of there. So now we're kind of changing the whole tax kind of calculation that we had on the first invoice when we originally saved it. So let's go and back up a little bit. So instead of that, maybe it was supposed to be this LC right here. So we'll pop it in there. Now this is going to update the unit price, and in case that it's the same amount of price, then you know it'll be the same tax amount. But now that we increase the pricing on there, now we owe a completely different tax now for this invoice. So whenever you updated a new item and the unit price gets on there, we'll need to go over here to the pay now. So we'll ask you to re-enter the payment because now we're technically creating a new invoice over the previous invoice. So I want you to verify with everything. This might be an issue if you had already taken payment with a card terminal, for example, and you don't want to charge the customer again because that would be a double charge and we don't want to do that. So in the case that you did do a card terminal payment, what we can do is say that we process this card manually. If you do it this way, it's going to change this narration and you will lose out on the token, for example. We'd already done this invoice before where we saved it as a balance. So because we did a price difference, now there's another pending amount of $11.04. So the number could also vary, or it could also decrease and lower the price as well. So you will need to adjust your finances on this. So in this case, I'm going to add that amount to the balance. And then the original card payment is on there. But I want to process this manually because if I decided to save this, it will prompt the terminal again. And if you're not too careful, your employees might accidentally charge the customer twice in the same, basically the same round. So whatever modification that you made, just make sure that the pending amount is still zeroed out. If you had taken any card payment with any terminal, you will want to make sure that you're processing that manually. Inside your books, nothing much has changed, but because you have the integration with either Clover or Payrock, for example, you might have a duplicate or another charge on the account. But processing this card manually this way in AltheaSuite will not prompt the terminal. It will let you go ahead and save this as a manual payment, saying that you did take this payment, saying to AltheaSuite that you did take that payment with this MasterCard. So once we hit that Save Now button, it has now overwritten that. And so now it's returned invoice number 263 back to its single mode over there. Same thing if I go to my other tab. And if I search for this invoice again, right now we see two because it was looking at the previous one when I first started to modify that. As soon as I search for that invoice, it's returned itself back to its original state. So this is a saved state. If I go over here to the right, you can see its status is now said saved. Whereas previously it said one said in progress and the other one said editing. So you do have some options as well. So if I emulate this again and try to modify the sales invoice, context menu, and then modify, this will open up into the editing mode. But if I come over here and search for this again, you'll see two different versions. Now, if this was stuck like that, maybe your internet went out or you stepped away and you got logged out, you can always come back over here, search for the ones that are, say, that they're editing. And what we can do is go to the context menu. You need to go to the context menu of the one that says in progress. So go find your in progress sales invoice, context menu, and there's an option to cancel the edit invoice. If you click this will ask you, are you sure you want to cancel the current edit sales invoice? You'll hit yes, and that will kind of revert the editing mode. So that took you out of this basically and save the invoice, whatever version it was before. So that is how to modify sales invoices. We typically don't want everybody to be able to willy-nilly modify their sales invoices, especially if it's sales invoices from the previous month or even the previous quarter where you've already sent to your accountants how much tax that you owe. So that is how to modify sales invoices in AltheaSuite. Again, I would keep that a very seldom thing that you do. Try not to modify too many sales invoices if you can help it. We do give you guys the opportunity to put the sales invoice into the view mode. Within the view mode, you can change things like the employee. You can change things like the customer. You can even change the warehouse. Anywhere where you see a little blue hyperlink, we can change the associated employee to be someone else. So we can make some of these changes without having to modify the sales invoice. But if you need to, you need to. And that's why we do have that option to modify. That's how to modify sales invoices in AltheaSuite. Thank you.